It's like an acid trip. This is what Mel Gibson said when describing his new upcoming sequel, The Passion of the Christ, The Resurrection. But before you jump to any conclusions, let us tell you what he meant by that.
Are you ready to do the sequel to The Passion now?
No.
When talking to Raymond Arroyo in 2016 about the possible sequel to The Passion of Christ, Mel Gibson assured us that there would be a sequel, but at that point he didn't reveal the release date. Later, he was invited as a guest on The Late Show with Stephen Colbert, and the host asked him about the possibility of a sequel to The Passion of Christ.
Called The Resurrection. It's a sequel to The Passion of the Christ. Is that true?
It's probably about 3 years off because it's a big subject.
However, Mel Gibson corrected Colbert when he said that the movie would be released soon. He said that it would be a project for the future, and it would take about 3 years until it's finally complete. That interview took place 6 years ago, and now we know that the movie will officially be released in 2024. That's still 5 years later than Mel Gibson's initial estimate. IMDb confirmed it. After Mel Gibson's big break from directing, he's going to be back in the chair 20 years after the release date of the original movie. Speaking of which, the first 2004 movie had a very modest budget of around $30 million, and it managed to gross over $600 million at the domestic and global box office. That was a 2,000% return on New Market Films' initial investment, so making a sequel to the movie was a no-brainer. However, with Gibson's controversial statements over the past few years, the actor had to move out of the spotlight. Right now he's back, and he's sitting in both the director's and the producer's chair of the movie, while also putting his own twist on the script of the movie. Speaking of which, we know that the new movie had 2 scripts written. The first one was done by Randall Wallace, the second one was completed by another successful writer, but Mel Gibson didn't disclose who he was. In an interview, the director said that the sequel to the original movie will smash that like button just like you should if you haven't done so already. But no, in all seriousness, the movie will juxtapose the 2 scripts and then he'll add his own personal twist to the story because otherwise he would feel alienated from the movie as a director. So in conclusion, the script will be written by Randall Wallace and Mel Gibson together. As for the crew behind the movie, we know that in the production department, Mel Gibson will be joined by Jim Caviezel and Bruce Davey, while the soundtrack producer will be the famous John Debney. As for the cast, we know that some of the actors from the original movie will return. That means Jim Caviezel will be portraying the now resurrected Jesus Christ. Maia Morgenstern will take on the role of Mary. Christo Jivkov will portray John, and Francesco DeVito will be playing Peter the Apostle. So why did the movie take so long to make when they started working on it back in 2016? Well, as Mel Gibson explained it, the source material kept growing, and at one point it became overwhelming to take it all in. Some might say that the movie will be repetitive, and Stephen Colbert raised this question during the interview.
How do you tell the story of the resurrection? It's a single event and then a revelation to the people in the upper room.
He pointed out that every Good Friday before Easter, we reenact the scenes from the resurrection of Christ or the 3 days after the death of Jesus. However, Mel Gibson pointed out that there's a lot more to the story that meets the eye. Aside from including a chronological sequence of events that took place after the body of Jesus was cleaned and laid upon the rock in the cave, there will be other events. The movie will not be a chronological story about the events that unfolded. Instead, it'll have one main story, and then that story will be intertwined with all of the other things that happened to other characters. The movie will take scenes not only from other people but also from different timelines. We won't have time travel, that's for sure, but we'll have time jumps. In other words, the action will go from the future to the past and then the present. Gibson will probably like to tell the story and all of the events of Jesus Christ's resurrection through the eyes of different characters. As he said, there are a lot of things happening around Jesus at the time of his death, as there are in real life. Therefore, the movie will not focus on one character only. It'll take different storylines and superpose them in a single movie. The goal of the whole thing is to create something that will resonate with all audiences from across the world. As Mel Gibson put it, he wants to make this movie relatable even to someone who has never heard the story of Christ or even read the Bible. So isn't the story of Jesus Christ resurrecting from the dead something we've all heard? To be honest, because it's a story we all know too well, it can get a little boring. We all know that after 3 days his body comes to life, he moved the giant round boulder from the entrance of the cave, and then he goes to heaven. Not much to discuss there. But as Mel Gibson pointed out, Jesus descended into Sheol. This name is derived from the Hebrew scriptures and it means smash that subscribe button, just like you should if you haven't done so already. But no, seriously now, it really means the place of the dead. In the New Testament, the same word is Hades, which also means the place of the dead, or the place of departed souls. Some people think that Jesus went to hell during these 3 days, but that's not true. Jesus didn't go to hell to suffer even more. He went to Hades, which is where all of the souls of the dead reside before they are sent to the lake of fire or hell. However, we should point out that there is the number 1, the abode of the saved, and number 2, the abode of the unsaved or the lost. These two places are separated from each other by a great chasm. Upon his death, Jesus didn't go to hell, he went to the blessed side of Sheol. From this side, he took the souls of the believers and ascended them to heaven. We should point out that the abode of the unsaved, or the judgment side of Sheol, remains the place where the non-believers are tormented for eternity. If you remember correctly, Jesus talked to the thief crucified next to him on the cross, "Today you'll be with me in paradise." Luke 23:43. So Jesus didn't go to hell, he went to the sacred side of Sheol. Technically speaking, while his body remained in the cave, his soul wandered the realm of the spirits, and he battled some horrifying monsters with his sword and freed the souls of the believers from their grasp. So why are we telling you all of this? Well, because in the interview with Colbert, he said that Jesus went to hell to fight Lucifer and the demons after breaking open the gates of bronze and freeing the souls. Even though Mel Gibson agreed it would not be in accordance with the Bible, and if they're aiming to make the movie as successful as the first one, they better stick to the original story. According to the interviews, he has done his research well in advance, and he's planning on making a movie that would depict the real life of Jesus. But will he portray him descending into Sheol? In the interview, he just smiled and said it would be an interesting thing to talk about. However, based on some of the later interviews where he described the movie as an acid trip with a spiritual guide, it seems to us that it would eventually make it to the movie and there would be some level of CGI involved. Even though it's still too early to tell, we think that the movie will still be in Aramaic, Latin, and Hebrew, just like the first one. See you in the next video.